What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and today I've got my rest of season tight end rankings for you guys. I've got my top 12 players at the position here in weeks 14 through 16 in the fantasy playoffs. So if you guys are new here around to the channel, make sure you go down and subscribe and turn that bell on so you guys are notified whenever I come out with a new video. We are nearing that 1,000 subscriber marker, and remember, once I hit that mark, I'll be giving away 10 draft guides for free to you guys for all the support you've shown me this season. So thank you guys so much for all you've done for me. I really appreciate it. Let's not waste any more time, and let's get into my top 12 tight ends. Before I start out with today's list, I want to toss out a couple of honorable mentions in Hayden Hurst and Logan Thomas. These guys didn't quite crack the top 12 because Hayden Hurst has had two really quiet games in his last three outings, and Logan Thomas, while he just came off of a career day and is having a great season with 5 touchdown grabs on the year, has San Francisco this coming week in the Level 1 playoffs, and Fred Warner has been a monster against the tight end and has absolutely shut down some of the league's best. So I don't really like those two guys for that reason. I think they're definitely viable plays going forward after week 14. But like I said, some inconsistencies have them trending down and some tougher matchups as well. So with that being said, my tight end 12 for the rest of the season is Johnu Smith. Obviously, Smith missed the week 13 performance against the Browns, in which Anthony Firkser got the starting nod there. But Johnu Smith, I think, will be back on the field this week, and he has a great closing schedule here with the Jags, the Lions, and the Packers. And we saw him have one of his best games of the season early on in week 2 against the Jags with 2 touchdowns. Smith comes in at the back end of my list here this week because he's been very boom-bust this season, but I really like that ceiling. The floor is very risky, but I think he's a guy who can return really nice value, and in these matchups down the stretch here, I think he can put up some pretty good numbers. At number 11, I've got Noah Fant, the second-year player out of Iowa for the Denver Broncos, and this is a very young and very talented player, and a guy who I think has a massive ceiling for the rest of his career on the Broncos. But right now, his fantasy ceiling is a little bit limited because of how young and inexperienced that Denver team is. And with the quarterback play right now, he is not the most consistent and safe play in the world, but he still sees a healthy amount of targets and looks in that offense. So I think he deserves some starting play here down the stretch. Coming in at my tight end 10 for the rest of the year is Eric Ebron of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And this is a guy who has been trending up as of late. He's got 3 straight games of 8.5 points or more in half PPR scoring, and this is a guy in 5 of his last 7 games has 4 receptions or more. So Eric Ebron, not just a red zone threat that we've seen him be throughout his career, he has really found an established role in that Pittsburgh offense, and is a guy Ben Roethlisberger trusts with the football. So I think Eric Ebron is a decent level starter here. I think you guys will start to notice that there is a very plateaued level and tier here at the back end for these tight ends. A lot of these guys are very similar in value and how they're ranked, but then once we get up closer to that 6 and above rank, and even in that top 3 group, there is a very clear cutoff and a huge gap between tiers. Coming in at my number 9 spot on the list here, I've got Evan Engram of the New York Giants, and this is a guy who is a highly athletic tight end and one of the quicker guys at the position. I think Engram might also be the best receiving threat on that Giants offense, and obviously getting Daniel Jones back here down the stretch would be a huge boost to his lineup value. But going forward against Arizona, Cleveland, and Baltimore, I think that's a fairly favorable schedule. But we've seen Engram be very streaky so far this season, and a guy with a really low floor, but who also has a nice ceiling. So he's a risky play, but I still think he warrants lineup value. Due to the talent and the matchups, I would give Engram the start in my lineups here in the playoffs. Hunter Henry coming in at my tight end 8 is a guy I see as a polar opposite to that of Evan Engram, who is a boom-bust player in my opinion, whereas Hunter Henry is a guy with a relatively safe floor, but not as high of a ceiling as we see from Engram. Henry is that guy that is a red zone threat and a check-down option for Justin Herbert in that Chargers offense. I think Henry is a sturdy and dependable lineup play and a guy that can be trusted in lineups, but not a guy who's going to go out there and win your week for you. Robert Tonyan coming in at my tight end 7 is a guy who I think is being disrespected and slept on heavily in fantasy right now, and a guy who I think has one of the higher ceilings out there in terms of tight ends the rest of this season. We see Tonyan right now is tied for the league lead in touchdowns at the tight end position with none other than Travis Kelce at 8, and I think he has Aaron Rodgers' complete trust in that Packers offense, and is a guy who I think will continue to see the football come his way frequently throughout games. I think right now he's the number 2 option in that offense. He's competing with Allen Lazard for that second level production, and I think he's a guy who I really trust here down the stretch. So Robert Tonyan, put him in your lineups. He has a great closing schedule here for Green Bay, and is a guy I think will continue to put touchdowns up on the board. Rob Gronkowski comes in at my tight end 6 here on the midway point of this list. And for a guy who started off very slow coming out of retirement this season, Gronk has really turned things around and become a very dependable target in that Tampa Bay offense for his former buddy in New England, Tom Brady, here down the stretch of this season. We've seen Gronk be leaned on when the going gets tough for that team, and offensively, Brady can really trust and rely on him. We saw him have his first 100-yard game of the season before the bye week in Week 13, and he has had a nice touchdown count the last few weeks as well. So Gronk is turning into a more and more dependable lineup option. I think the touchdowns will continue to go up on the board, and we will see some more Gronk spikes down the stretch of this year here with a very easy closing schedule. At number 5, I've got Dallas Goedert, the Philadelphia Eagles tight end, and this is a guy I think you approach with some caution here in Week 14, coming into a game against a white-hot Saints unit defensively and a transitioning quarterback team right now in the Eagles, moving from Carson Wentz to Jalen Hurts. I think that can have some impact on how the Eagles are used in terms of fantasy. But Dallas Goedert, nonetheless, still a very dependable option. And with the Eagles deploying 2 and even 3 tight end sets on the field as a regular part of their offense, I think Goedert has a high fantasy value here. But I wouldn't be too ambitious about starting him here in the level 1 playoffs. At number 4, I've got TJ Hockenson of the Detroit Lions. And this is a guy who has been very dependable all year long with Matthew Stafford on the field, and a guy who does not need tight end production to put up high-level fantasy numbers. We have seen Hockenson be involved highly as a receiver and put together some very nice yardage totals throughout the year. You can see his comp right there. Travis Kelce, this is a very good receiving threat in that offense, and the former Iowa tight end is a very good talent here in the NFL and a guy that is developing nicely for that team. Like I said, Hockenson doesn't need the touchdown production to have a very nice game in fantasy, and I think that gives him a very safe floor here in the playoffs. And for a guy who does get in the end zone at times, I think that also gives him a very nice ceiling as well. So I fully trust Hockenson here down the stretch. He's a must-start for me every week going forward, and a guy I think can have some very great games. Mark Andrews is my number 3 fantasy playoff tight end here in 2020, and this is a guy who is currently on the COVID list right now, but is fully expected to make a full recovery and return to the field in Week 14. And for a guy who I think is the best receiving threat in that Ravens offense, I expect a big finish to the year for him. He has been a very streaky touchdown producer, but is a guy who can put up a massive ceiling in lineups, and I love that Ravens schedule here down the stretch. He's got Cleveland, Jacksonville, and New York here the rest of this season, weeks 14 through 16, so I think there's some great opportunities to be had here, and he's a guy I would fully trust with my lineup spot. Darren Waller comes in at tight end 2, and this is an easy one. He's the top threat in that Raiders offense in the passing game, and he is Derek Carr's favorite target. Obviously, he just went for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in his last performance in Week 13, so this guy is on a hot streak right now, and he's basically a huge wide receiver with that type of speed playing tight end. He just dominates matchups and is a nightmare for defensive backs and linebackers. So Darren Waller, great option in fantasy playoffs. This guy produces like a wide receiver 1. And then while Darren Waller is great, he is still not quite on the level of Travis Kelce right now. And he is far and away the best tight end in fantasy football at this point in the year. And it's not even close, I would argue. Travis Kelce is number 2 in receiving yards in the NFL, and he has 8 touchdowns, which is tied with Robert Tonyan for the league lead at the position. Obviously, I think he's even Pat Mahomes' favorite target and has the best quarterback in the league throwing him the football. So Travis Kelce, another guy who is basically a huge wide receiver playing tight end. He is very slippery. He's hard for DBs to tackle, and this guy makes plays left and right. So Travis Kelce, far and away the best tight end in fantasy right now, and a huge lineup piece going forward that can change leagues. Those are my top 12 tight ends for the rest of this fantasy season. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and turn that bell on so you guys are notified whenever I come out with a new video or go live for a fantasy Q&A. So make sure to also go check out my other positional rankings videos here for this postseason, and go comment any questions you guys have for me down below, and I'll be sure to get to you guys. So thank you again. I appreciate all of you guys that stop by the SFS channel here and support the content I put out for you guys. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.